Buongiorno. They made the German one come up here, the trainer. So books out. There will be a test after this, and we'll see how much you get. This is about you judging what to do with your current investment in Liferay. Probably all of you, or at least a lot of you, have some investment in Liferay, I guess, in Liferay 6.2, in customizations, right? So who here has some portlets, hooks, Ext, some plugin? Okay, testing the other way around. Who does not have any hooks, portlets? Okay, I thought so. What about the rest? I just assume all of you have some investment in Liferay, be it a portlet, be it a hook, be it several of them, being even Ext plugins. This is a technical track, so you probably know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Ext and about hooks, right? So that's changing, customizing Liferay's behavior. Now, who of you knows what OSGI is and how to build an OSGI module? Who does not know how to build an OSGI module? Okay, I thought so. Well, with Liferay 7, we are building, or we are bringing in a lot of different possibilities, different options to customize Liferay. Not only the old plugins SDK with portlets, hooks, Ext, and so on. So, what does that mean for you? Does everything need to be rewritten? Well, the good news is, yay, everything continues to work. Great, happy everybody, you can just continue as before. Perfect? Sounds good, right? Now, there is a caveat there, because we are building Liferay now in in a large number of modules. Those are all OSGI modules, tiny modules. And hooks and Ext and so on continue to work on Liferay's core. However, we're doing our best to get as much out of Liferay's core as we can, which means ideally we will only have a very, very tiny core left and nothing much for you to hook. So if you want to change Liferay's behavior, you will need to change Liferay's module, or one of Liferay's modules. So all of the modifications that you did so far, all of the techniques, writing a hook, writing a struts action, and so on, still work, but they might be ineffective because we have changed it, we have built something in a module. So what to do about that? Well, let's talk about the update of code from previous to current versions of Liferay. Who of you has done some migration from one version of Liferay to the next? What kind of experience was that? This one? Okay, let me talk about the migration and about the conversion. And what's the difference? Well, with migration, we are trying to separate the two a bit. Migration means you have a current piece of code which uses the current Liferay API. Naturally, the API will change with Liferay 7. That's what a new major version is all about. And that's what we call migration. That's just basically using your code, adopting it to the new API. And there's a very good message for you here. The next method is a conversion. What does conversion mean? That actually means you are building a new OSGI module which uses all of the new plugin techniques for Liferay, which also means you're no longer tied to extending the core with your plugins. Now let me start with the migration part. The good news is migration, being about one API to the next, being about breaking changes of Liferay. The breaking changes, hopefully most of them, of course we don't guarantee that, but hopefully most of them we have documented. And I would like to introduce you to the breaking changes document that one or two might have seen in Liferay's GitHub repository. This is it. So when you scroll through that document, pay attention to the scroll bar up here, to tiny little thing. So you'll see that's quite a bit. And this is what I want to read to you today. No, actually, I don't want that, obviously. Well, there's a bad news and a good news. The bad news is there are changes. The good news is these changes are well documented. And these changes are not only documented in a human-readable format, because who here is reading documentation? Right? So we have a few tools that read the documentation for you, which is particularly one tool for the breaking changes. We call it BLADE. BLADE is an acronym that I cannot memorize. The L is for something in Liferay, and the B, A, D, and E are for something else. D is probably development. So I never memorize it, sorry for that, but just remember, there is a tool called BLADE that you can install and invoke the migrate target, or the migrate action, on your existing code. What does that do? Well, it actually parses our breaking changes document, which has a machine-readable form, and it gives you markers just as you would have with compiler errors. So there are not only compiler errors, this does not work, but there's an actual marker pointing to the documentation that you have seen in the BLADE document with the LPS ticket that tells you about what changed, why it changed, where it went to. And in some cases, when we just said, okay, this API needs to go to a different Java package because it's in its own module, then it can even rewrite your code automatically. So you basically just type BLADE, migrate, your project name, and done. Well, probably not, but you have a nice starting point. At least you get the pointers. This is an API that does no longer exist. You need to do something, and you get the reason for why this does not exist, and some hints what you should do instead. There's an example, and I think this is hard to read. I tried to fit it all onto one screen. This is basically, we have renamed the action command class to something else, and we have moved a package. So you can see everything here. There's the LPS ticket on top, but, well, you don't need to read it. This is kind of what you can see when you actually get the migration tool running. This already works and is running, and it is integrated, or it is being integrated into the next version of Liferay IDE, or Liferay Developer Studio. There was a webinar recently with Greg Amerson, our developer tooling guy, who has demonstrated this right in Eclipse. So you'll have markers in Eclipse that you can just double click and you will be taken to exactly that position in the source code where you need to do some changes. Really neat, really nice, and well, if you don't want to read documentation, and who does, then the tool does it for you. Quite nice. Speaking of BLADE and speaking of documentation and speaking of things, well, if you bear with me and actually read a little bit of documentation, there is a website, dev.liferay.com, dev.liferay.com, where we are migrating all of our documentation to. And that already has quite a lot of information on Liferay 7. It is still draft, yes, just as Liferay 7 is still draft, or alpha, but there is already a lot of information on how to install BLADE, how to work with BLADE, how to build your individual new portlets, and so on. Now, migration, what I just demonstrated, is what we recommend you do immediately. And with immediately, I don't mean when you migrate to Liferay 7 within the next 1 or 2 years, but you can help us if you just use your code and you try the migration to Liferay 7 now. It's still alpha, but your feedback right now can actually help making this tool bulletproof or bulletproofer than we can with just our own changes. So if you give us feedback, this works, this does not work, we have forgotten something, or it's uncomfortable to do something, then now is the time to bring that feedback in. If you do that in 6 months, well, we will still pay attention to it, and the next tool will not come with Liferay 7.1, but the next tool will be updated. But hey, why not make your life easier by just trying it out now quickly and then using it working when you're actually depending on it. Now in conversion, we have the conversion planned, which takes your portlet, your current portlet module, and converts it to an OSGI module. Now where's the big difference? We have two ways to create a portlet in future. One is the JSR 286 way. You all know Portlet XML and all of these descriptors and so on. When you create a new OSGI portlet, you will see that all you'll have in your project, in terms of code, is one Java class with a lot of annotations in there. The annotations have everything that previously went into Portlet XML. And this way, Liferay can easily deploy it onto its, into its runtime and just continue to use it. Now, we are a portal. We are JSR 286 compliant, which means that we will still be able to deploy a WAR file with Portlet XML, Web XML, and so on. That still continues to work. Internally, exactly the same things happen. So internally, it will be deployed as an OSGI module. But if you speak OSGI natively, you get so much more out of Liferay that I really recommend to do it early. However, migration is a must. Conversion is an option. Did I forget anything here? Yes. If you're using Service Builder, you might be wondering, like, where does that go? How does that fit into the whole OSGI world? Right now, Service Builder basically is built in a single project, and it generates a service jar. Now we have changed this to actually be split up into 4 packages. There is the API, which has just the interface. There's the service, which has the, naturally, service implementation. There's the web, in case you have some UI component to your service builder. And there's a test package. Now, great, because all of this modularization will bring a lot of opportunities for you to actually now test. Those of you who have heard me talking about unit tests and how that relates to Liferay will have known that, or will know that I'm quite skeptical to do unit tests if you are like stuck between 2 frameworks. On the UI on the one side and the implementation, the persistence on the other side. If you're stuck in between, that's really hard. Now, this promises to be a lot easier with the services split up into many different packages. And there's no more util classes, but you just get proper OSGI services injected. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then portlet to component was what I already mentioned. Now Blade, and I still don't know the name, I can't remember it. Blade will give you another option to create a new project. This is what you can immediately try and see the immediate result. It's just like code this size is a portlet. It's a single file to read. And if you know portlets with Portlet XML, you will immediately recognize what kind of component in OSGI to write. There are several patterns there. JSP portlet, which is Liferay's MVC portlet, which gets generated. There's just a basic generic portlet. There's a service command which generates all the 4 service projects: API, web, test, and service. And a service wrapper project which you can use to override Liferay services. Now, this used to be a hook, but right now, with Liferay 7, you might not want to override something in the core, but in a portlet. Good news, the service wrapper works on everything. Also good news, service wrappers, this technique is what we will use to extend our own plugins. If you ever wanted to override the doc bar, Vue.jsp in the doc bar, you will have seen that we did so as well with the notifications portlet, and that will be a lot cleaner with extending with modules. Speaking of which, I'll come back to that. I forgot one slide, which is speaking of Blade. There are 4 demo projects that you can just generate, but there's a bunch more. There are several samples that we have which give you a very easy introduction to tiny projects that do exactly what they state. There is authenticator, indexer, postprocessor, portlets, several portlet samples. There is, top right, there is a portlet filter, which is what I would really like to introduce to you guys. Now, why portlet filter? Portlet filters exist already in Liferay 6.2, but you will introduce a portlet filter with each portlet. So what good is it? Well, who knows? If you deploy a portlet that comes with its own filters, you might as well have all of that code in the portlet anyways. It's all coming in one project. So what good are portlet filters? Now with modules, you can introduce portlet filters after the fact. For example, you can override and change and totally eliminate JSP hooks. Who of you has seen this image before? That means you're not reading my blog, which means I can give you my interpretative dance, and you'll need to have a little bit of fantasy here because I guess that the colors don't really go through well. This piece of paper says View JSP in black, and there's a Liferay logo somewhere like drawn onto. Now, if you want to override a View JSP in Liferay, currently, what happens? Let's say you write a hook, which is the red hook, and you deploy that red hook. That means, well, the red hook is here, that comes with its own View JSP. It says R in the corner. I hope that everybody can see that. Otherwise, well, you'll see what happens. So as soon as you deploy this hook, View JSP gets renamed into viewportal.jsp, and we have the new View JSP from our red hook. Now, we did that, for example, with the docbar, and we overrode the docbar from notification portlet. What happens when you do the same thing? Let's say you introduce a gray hook, which is another hook that overrides the same JSP. Let me show you what happens. The red one gets renamed into viewportal.jsp, which means this is now viewportal.jsp, and we're introducing a gray plugin. Now, this is your new result. You have a red viewportal.jsp and a gray view.jsp. Now, what happens when you undeploy one of those hooks? Which one should I undeploy, the gray or the red one? I'll do the red one now. I'll undeploy the red hook. The red hook introduced the view.jsp, which means, oh, we probably need to throw this away and rename this back to the original view.jsp. Now, if you paid attention, this is the red version, even though I have just eliminated the red hook. I've just undeployed it. What happens if I now undeploy the gray hook? Portal definitely completely broken. So if you read my blog, find that image, and you'll see the fix for that, which is actually in Enterprise Edition Service Pack 12, but there's a neat X plugin to it. Now, where do I want to go with that? Hooks, JSP hooks, probably well used in Liferay, but they really go down to the implementation level. With an OSGI module, please stop using them. You can rather introduce a portlet filter after the fact. So this is totally independent of your existing portlet or of any existing portlet. And you can introduce a portlet filter implementing the full render phase of a portlet, which means there is no more copying pages, renaming pages on the application server level and doing that exactly once or you're toast. Now, coming back to your Liferay 6 experience, there are a few more things to know about portlets, which is, well, JSR 286 portlets, I told you, will continue to work. Liferay MVC portlets will as well. Struts portlet, well, we're trying to eliminate struts as much as we can from Liferay. I don't know if we will eliminate it 100%, but as far as possible, we're going to eliminate struts out of Liferay's core, which incidentally means that the struts hooks They continue to work, but they're overriding an action that does not exist anymore. That's now Liferay MVC. JSF, Spring, Vaadin, so on those more complex frameworks, we're still working. There are a few caveats that we need to cover, but well, in general, they work, but there, as I said, there's a few caveats, and services I've covered. Hooks, well, I've mentioned struts. If you are overwriting the language, there will be methods for you to override. There is an API for overriding language, and it continues to work as before. Same caveat, if we have the text that you want to change in the core, it will continue to work as before. If it is in a particular module, like now in the web content or somewhere else, you might need to isolate the text that you need to override in the web content module and write a specific module to do that. However, overriding text is very trivial. And JSP hooks, I've also already covered. By the way, I think we'll have some time, well, I hope we'll have some time so that you can actually ask some questions either here or in, well, after the fact, during the breaks and so on. I'll be happy to go more into detail, but in half an hour, I thought if I go into a demo and show you running code, if something goes wrong, half an hour will be over and there will be nothing here. So I'll rather give you some information now, and then I'll be available all day, and please ask me anything. Ext. Who here has some Ext plugin? Okay. Good news is it'll continue to work. Bad news is everything might be in modules. Well, we are trying to make Ext suffer a sudden death, which means we are introducing a lot more of extension points in Liferay. All of the modules, all of Liferay's internals have a lot more of integration points. So if at all possible, check those integration points, please. You have seen the list of samples that we had for Blade, the sample portlets, sample projects that override several services. You can now introduce a new editor component to the new Alloy editor that you have seen before. You can introduce that through a specific plugin to the editor. You can introduce a new page on one of those tabbed preferences page, for example, the portal settings, the user account settings. That has a specific API to introduce a new section into it. So you can do a lot with new extension points. If I would tell you all of these extension points, well, we could write a test and you'll probably just remember 2 of them, but it's a lot. I would say, like, I would get to 15 probably if I'm forced to, but it's probably a lot more. Now, for all of your Ext plugins, you know this is a major upgrade. Probably you'll have to change something there. Try to change it in a way that you completely eliminate Ext. And most likely, you will need to change something in one of the modules. Themes, something will change. Bootstrap 3, yay! And we're actually maintaining a separate branch with Bootstrap 4, because what actually might happen is that we publish at the same time that we release at roughly the same time that Bootstrap 4 is coming out. And, well, we're trying to not run into the same issues as last time. There is a theme session this afternoon at 20 to 3. Pier Paolo will do that, so I'll not cover that in depth. And the last part there is Ant, Maven. Good news, we're not forcing the SDK on anybody anymore. Maven will be a first-class citizen. Gradle will be a first-class citizen. And there is another option, which is called BND. BND is the build tool for OSGI modules, which severely simplifies OSGI modules. Now, a few more things for you to learn. Actually, this is roughly ending it, but some of you might know of Radio Liferay, which is, the URL is not on there. Who dared doing that? Well, liferay.com/radio, no, /radio, liferay.com/radio. The next 3 podcasts are, well, Ray Auger, twice, on modularization. Once the motivation, once the technical information. The third one in a row now is Nate Kavanagh, who is talking about all of the UI stuff, lexicon, and all other news in the front end in 7.0. And there's a lot more episodes planned, so you can get a lot more from just that during your commute in the morning, in the afternoon. Just get it in audio. That helped me a lot. Last DEF CON, I just got them for a private session, and we recorded like half an hour, 40 minutes or so of just pure information. That actually works in audio. That being said, I'm not quite sure how much time I have, so we might have some questions. If I was too general for you, if you want to have some very specific information, please let me know. Luca has a microphone here. As this is recorded, we will need to have a microphone so that the question goes on to recording as well. But I hope that you have some overview. And now, what did I miss? What did you expect here? Anyone? It's hard to see. Yay, better to see. Nobody? There's one.
Just a simple question. What about taglib, portal taglib?
Portal taglib, yes. Okay, you're hitting exactly the one that I know the least of. I have seen some taglib overrides, but in the past, did you override the implementation for tag libraries or JSPs? Sorry, again, the JSP for taglibs. I'm not 100% sure what that would mean, because that's kind of a mixture between OSGI on the one hand and really the JSP compiler on the other side. I can't really know, sorry. I'll have to look that up. Sorry, that hits right into the one thing that I'm not quite aware of. So I'm getting used to 7.0 as well. Sorry. Let's try another one. Okay, Dennis?
What about Spring MVC portlets and migration and conversions?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in general, the same technique as before continues to work, so that continues to work as well. I do know that for JSF, we are still sorting out some things, but I haven't heard about problems with Spring MVC, especially because that basically is a fancy way to write something on top of the API, and it doesn't have such a big opinion on the front end side. So I don't expect a lot of issues there. JSF goes like up to the front end stack to all of the taglibs and then down to the command processors and so on. So on Spring, I don't expect those problems. But we're currently working on them. The other good news is if you try it out now and you let us know where it doesn't work, now is the time for us to fix it before release instead of after release and then, oh my God, something is not working. But in general, in JSF, we know there are some problems. In Spring, I am not aware that we know there are some problems. Okay.
Grazie Olaf.